The morning light filtered through the bio-crystal windows of New Harmony Colony as Commander Jinwoo Park walked through the central plaza. Children's laughter echoed around him, some voices high and musical like human children, others creating gentle clicking sounds that belonged to young Zephyrians. He smiled watching a group of mixed youngsters playing together, their game involving both human technology and Zephyrian bioforms that glowed softly in their small hands. "Commander Park," called Dr. So-Young Lee as she approached with her daily reports. Beside her glided Veltar, her Zephyrian research partner. The alien's 6 graceful limbs moved in perfect rhythm while colorful patterns shifted across their scaled skin. Jinwoo had learned to read those patterns over the years. Right. Now they showed contentment and excitement. "The harvest results are excellent," Dr. Lee continued, her voice filled with pride. "The bio-neural chambers produced 30% more food than last quarter. The hybrid crops are stronger and grow faster than anything either of our species could create alone." Veltar's translator device turned their melodic clicks into human speech. "The joining of human persistence with our biological knowledge continues to surprise us all. Your people's determination combined with our living technology creates wonders." Jinwoo nodded, remembering the stories his grandfather had told him about the early days. 50 years ago, humanity had been dying from a terrible genetic disease called the Silent Death. It spread from colony to colony, turning people's own DNA into poison. At the same time, the Zephyrian homeworld of Silandra was collapsing as their entire ecosystem failed. 2 dying species had found each other by accident when a human refugee ship crash-landed on Silandra. Instead of fighting over the dying world's remaining resources, they had chosen to help each other. Human engineers used their technology to heal the poisoned atmosphere of the Zephyrian world. In return, Zephyrian bioscientists created genetic treatments that stopped the Silent Death forever. From that desperate beginning had grown something no one in the galaxy had thought possible: true cooperation between completely different species. Human children learned Zephyrian biosculpting, while young Zephyrians studied human mathematics. Their buildings grew instead of being built, combining human engineering with living Zephyrian architecture that could repair itself and adapt to changing needs. "Look at them," Jinwoo said, pointing to a group of teenagers working together on a science project. A human girl named Min Jung was carefully adjusting a mechanical device while her Zephyrian friend soft singer Nalvin grew specialized biocomponents to interface with her technology. 3 generations have grown up knowing no other way of life. The colony was proof that cooperation worked better than competition. Their medical advances had saved millions of lives across dozens of worlds. Their agricultural techniques had ended famine on 17 planets. Their peaceful example had inspired other species to try working together instead of fighting. "Commander," Lieutenant Daehyun Kim's voice crackled over the communication system. "We have a priority signal from the outer system monitors." Jinwoo felt a small chill. Priority signals were rare in their peaceful corner of space. "What kind of signal?" "Unknown fleet approaching our system. Large formation, we count at least 300 vessels. They're not responding to our standard greeting transmissions." Through the bioglass walls, Jinwoo could see human and Zephyrian families going about their daily routines. In the gardens, both species worked together to tend hybrid plants that glowed with soft bioluminescence. In the workshops, human tools shaped materials that Zephyrian biotechnology had grown specifically for each task. He activated his personal communicator. "Scale singer Hyun-soo, we may have visitors approaching the system." The response came quickly in the musical tones that served as the Zephyrian leader's voice. "Already sensing disturbance, friend Jinwoo. My people feel something wrong in the space between worlds. These approaching ones, they carry the feeling of hunters seeking prey." Jinwoo's stomach tightened. For 50 years, the galaxy had left them in peace. Their success had been their protection. Who would attack the alliance that had achieved what everyone said was impossible? They had no enemies, threatened no one, and shared their discoveries freely with anyone who asked. As gentle alarm chimes began sounding throughout the colony, Jinwoo watched a mixed group of children hurrying to their shelters. They moved without panic, following the safety drills they had practiced but never expected to need. Human children helped their Zephyrian friends who moved more slowly on land, while young Zephyrians used their superior senses to guide human youngsters through the bio-corridors that could be confusing to those not born with the ability to read their living patterns. "Sir," came Lieutenant Kim's voice again, tension clear in his tone. "The approaching fleet has just transmitted a message. They're demanding we prepare to receive a diplomatic envoy, but their formation looks more like a battle group than a peaceful mission." Jinwoo looked out at the colony one more time, taking in the sight of two species living as one people. Whatever was coming, whatever these strangers wanted, they would face it together as they had faced everything else for 50 years. He was about to learn that their very success had made them a target, and that some beings viewed their unity, not as an inspiration, but as a threat that needed to be destroyed. The enemy fleet arranged itself around New Harmony like a metal cage. 300 warships formed a perfect sphere, their weapons pointed at both the human settlements and the living Zephyrian biocities that pulsed across the planet's surface like giant hearts. Admiral Kyung-ho Jang appeared as a shimmering hologram in the colony's main meeting hall. The amphibious being's throat swelled as he spoke, flanked by his allies, the insect-like Velcri and the crystal-bodied Shartex. His voice came through the translator as cold croaks. "The unnatural joining between mammals and reptiles ends today. Your cooperation threatens the proper order of things. Each species must remain pure and separate." Commander Jinwoo stood beside scale singer Hyen Su, their united presence a silent rejection of the demand. "Our alliance harms no one. We share our food technology freely. Our medicine has healed sick people on dozens of worlds." Hyunsu's scales shifted to deep red, the color that meant absolute refusal. Their musical voice needed no translation as they sang their response. "We hurt no living being. Why do the swimmers in metal bring war scent to our peaceful home?" The insect commander Cheekshak clicked her mandibles with cruel satisfaction. "Because your success makes others ask dangerous questions. You prove that different species can work together. This challenges the natural hierarchies that keep order in the galaxy." The crystal being Kethral chimed in discord. "Surrender separately. Return to your homeworlds. Accept that some barriers exist for good reasons." Jinwoo and Hyunsu spoke at the same moment, one in human speech, the other in Zephyrian song. Both said the same word: never. Admiral Kyung-ho's throat sac swelled with satisfaction. "Then you have chosen death over wisdom." The attack began with terrible precision. The enemy had studied their target well. Every weapon fired at exactly the same type of building, the neural link chambers where human technology joined with Zephyrian biology. These sacred spaces were where their greatest achievements were born, where two different kinds of science became something entirely new. Dr. So-Young Lee was working in Laboratory 7 when the energy beam struck. She had spent 3 years developing a new medical treatment alongside her partner Veltar. The bio-neural matrix they had created together exploded in cascading light. The last thing she saw was Veltar's beautiful green scales fading to the gray of death. Across the colony, the same horror repeated. Every strike killed both human and Zephyrian researchers at the same time. The enemy had planned this carefully. Maximum psychological damage with surgical precision. Lieutenant Dae-Hyun Kim died trying to protect a group of mixed-species children. His Zephyrian counterpart, soft singer Nelia, fell beside him, there, different colored blood mixing in the dirt of New Harmony. The bombardment lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it stopped, 847 people were dead, 423 human and 424 Zephyrian. The precise balance was intentional, designed to show that the attackers saw both species as equally worthless. But the deaths were only the beginning of the real weapon. Within hours, enemy propaganda broadcasts spread across the galaxy. They showed footage of the unnatural hybrid abominations their weapons had destroyed. They painted the human Zephyrian alliance as a dangerous infection that would spread and corrupt other species if allowed to continue. The lies worked with terrifying speed. 3 neutral species canceled their trade agreements within days. The Galactic Council called for investigations into the long-term dangers of aggressive interspecies cooperation. Even some human colonies began questioning whether the alliance had gone too far. Jinwoo knelt beside the crater that had once been the children's learning center. Small toys were scattered in the rubble, both human designs and Zephyrian bioforms that had gone dark when their young makers died. He picked up a small glowing flower that a Zephyrian child had grown for their human friend. It was still warm, but fading. The bond that was sacred lies broken beyond repair. Scale singer Hyun-soo sang in tones of infinite sadness. Their scales had turned the deep black of mourning. Jinwoo looked at his old friend, remembering all the years they had worked together, all the problems they had solved side by side, all the children who had grown up calling them both family. The trust that had taken 50 years to build lay shattered like the biocrystal walls around them. "Yes," he whispered, watching smoke rise from the ruins of their shared dreams. "It is broken." The enemy had achieved their goal. The alliance was fractured. The surviving humans and Zephyrians retreated to separate parts of the colony, each species grieving in their own way. No more children played together in the gardens. No more researchers collaborated in the laboratories. The neural link chambers that remained intact stood empty and silent. But Admiral Kyung-ho had made a crucial mistake. He believed that breaking the bond would make his enemies weaker. He thought that separated, the humans and Zephyrians would be easier to defeat or control. He was about to learn that some bonds, when broken, don't disappear. They transform into something far more dangerous. In their shared grief and rage, the two species were forging a new connection, one built not on cooperation and trust, but on the terrible unity of those who have lost everything and have nothing left to lose except each other. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when you took two peoples who had learned to dream as one and taught them to have nightmares instead. 6 months after the attack, two different kinds of anger were taking shape across the galaxy. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Hae-won Song stood in the war room beneath Geneva, watching holographic displays show humanity's industrial power awakening, like a sleeping giant. Every human world had volunteered everything they had. Factories that once made toys now built weapons. Schools became training centers. The entire species had united around a single purpose: revenge. "Production numbers are beyond our highest estimates," reported General Minho Choi, his voice heavy with controlled rage. "Every human colony has sent materials. We have enough metal and energy to build a fleet that could darken entire solar systems." The ships taking shape in orbit around Earth, Mars, and the asteroid belt were nothing like the peaceful vessels humanity had built for 50 years. These were instruments of pure destruction, massive dreadnoughts armed with weapons that could crack planets, stealth ships carrying enough explosives to vaporize cities, and carrier vessels that would release swarms of automated killers. Humanity's approach to war was exactly what everyone expected: bigger guns, thicker armor, overwhelming force applied with mechanical precision. They would build more ships than the enemy could count, arm them with weapons the enemy couldn't match, and crush all resistance through sheer industrial might. "The Krell will learn," Admiral Hae-won said, her eyes reflecting the cold light of the weapon displays, "that there are prices to pay for destroying sacred things." In the military academies, young humans studied the footage of New Harmony's destruction over and over. They memorized the faces of every researcher who died, learned the names of every child killed in the attack. Their instructors taught them that war was mathematics. Calculate the enemy's strength, build superior force, apply it without mercy or hesitation. 3,000 light-years away, on the deep world of Silandra, war singer Tae-min moved through biocaverns that had changed completely since the breaking. The living walls that once pulsed with gentle colors now showed darker patterns as the planet's consciousness prepared for a very different kind of conflict. The swimmers in metal think they understand biological warfare. Taemin's scales shifted through colors that had no names, shades of vengeance that nature had never needed to create. They imagine simple weapons and armor. They cannot comprehend what we have become. Elder Songkeeper Ye-jin, ancient beyond human understanding, gestured toward the growing chambers that lined the cavern walls. Inside them, things that were definitely not natural writhed and developed. 47 breeding cycles, we learned. From our nest friends, they sang in harmonies that made the chamber walls weep glowing tears. Now we shall craft war forms that sing only of endings. The creatures taking shape in those bio-wombs were nightmares given flesh, viruses that could rewrite enemy DNA while their victims watched helplessly, living ships that evolved during battle to counter whatever weapons were used against them, atmosphere-borne spores that would turn entire worlds into graveyards where nothing could live. Most terrifying were the grief singers, Cypherians who had volunteered for biomodifications that would let them survive in the vacuum of space. Their songs could disrupt enemy electronics through pure sound, turning the enemy's own technology against them. They were living weapons who would sing funeral dirges as their enemies died. The metal swimmers wished to break the bond that was sacred. War singer Taemin's scales now showed patterns of deep red touched with black, war colors that meant no mercy would be given. They shall learn that some breaks create monsters. Unlike the humans with their factories and assembly lines, the Cypherians grew their weapons like gardeners tending deadly flowers. Each bioform was unique, adapted for specific purposes, designed to learn and change as it encountered resistance. Where humanity built standardized fleets, the Cypherians cultivated living armadas that would be different every time they fought. Neither species spoke to the other during this time. The Krell had succeeded in their main goal. The alliance was broken. Human and Cypherian survivors of New Harmony lived in separate sections of the ruined colony, each group mourning in their own way. But Admiral Kyung-ho and his allies had made a critical error in their understanding. They assumed that breaking the bond would create two weakened enemies fighting separate wars. They believed that divided, the humans and Cypherians would be easier to defeat. Instead, they had created two completely different apocalypses that would strike at the same time. Human military planners worked with cold efficiency, calculating exactly how many ships they would need to overwhelm Krell defenses, how much firepower would be required to reduce enemy worlds to rubble, how many soldiers would be needed to occupy conquered territory. Their war would be methodical, mechanical, unstoppable. Cypherian war singers composed ballads of destruction, growing weapons that would adapt to every defensive measure, creating plagues that would turn the enemy's biology against them, designing living nightmares that would hunt their targets across star systems. Their war would be organic, evolutionary, inescapable. The galaxy watched the military buildup with growing terror. Other species who had supported the attack on New Harmony began to realize they had made a terrible mistake. They had wanted to break a dangerous alliance, but instead they had taught two peaceful peoples how to make war with the same devastating cooperation they had once used to heal worlds. Soon, the Krell would face something no civilization in galactic history had ever encountered: extinction from two directions at once, by enemies who no longer trusted each other, but still moved with the terrible synchronization of those who had once shared the same dreams. The war began on 17 different worlds at exactly the same moment, as if two separate forces had somehow coordinated without speaking to each other. For the first time in galactic history, a civilization faced complete destruction from two entirely different kinds of warfare, striking simultaneously. Admiral Haewon Song's human fleet arrived at the Krell border world of Morthak 7 like a metal storm. Her flagship, the UES Vengeance Unforgotten, led 200 vessels in perfect formation. The sight was terrifying in its mechanical precision, row after row of identical warships moving with the rhythm of a giant machine. "Target their military bases first," she commanded from her bridge, watching the tactical displays with cold satisfaction. "Complete destruction of all armed forces. Leave the civilian areas untouched. We are not murderers." The human assault was a masterpiece of overwhelming force applied with surgical accuracy. Kinetic bombardment platforms reduced Krell military installations to smoking craters within minutes. Automated hunter-killer swarms eliminated every armed vessel in the system in less than 3 hours. The surviving Krell population found themselves completely defenseless, but unharmed. a mercy that somehow felt more frightening than slaughter. Admiral Kyung-ho Jang, broadcasting from his command vessel in orbit, managed one desperate transmission before human jamming systems cut his communications. This is impossible. No single species has this much industrial power. But he was wrong about it being a single species effort. Every human world had contributed to this fleet. Children had melted down their metal toys to make hull plating. Elderly citizens had worked dangerous jobs in ammunition factories. An entire species had transformed their grief into precisely calculated destruction. 3 star systems away, war singer Tae-min was conducting a completely different kind of warfare at the Krell fortress world of Velkanos. The Zephyrian bioships approached like seeds floating on solar winds, small, seemingly fragile, utterly harmless looking. The Krell defenders barely noticed them until it was far too late to matter. Nest singers begin the song of unmaking. Tae-min commanded from within their living vessel, whose interior pulsed with the rhythm of a massive heart. The grief singers opened their throats and released harmonies that had been designed specifically to disrupt Krell nervous systems. The sound waves, amplified by bioacoustic enhancers grown for this exact purpose, penetrated enemy hull plating and turned the defenders' own brains against them. But that was only the beginning. Atmospheric processors released into Velkanos' air supply began converting the planet's oxygen into compounds that were deadly to Krell physiology, while remaining breathable for most other species. The world's defenders found themselves slowly choking on air that should have kept them alive. "Please," gasped Commander Cheekshak of the Valkyrie forces, broadcasting on all frequencies as her troops collapsed around her. "We surrender. We yield completely." War singer Tae-min's response came in harmonics that needed no translation. The nest friends who were murdered could not surrender. Neither can you. Across Krell territory, the same pattern repeated with terrifying variations. Human forces demonstrated that industrial might could crush any defense when applied with sufficient focus and coordination. Zephyrian bioweapons proved that evolution was the ultimate arms race, and they had been preparing for this war for 50 years. The other species who had supported the Krell's attack watched in growing horror as reports filtered in from the battle zones. The Shartex Harmony convened an emergency session, their crystalline forms chiming with frequencies that sounded like panic made audible. "This was not supposed to happen," Harmonizer Kethral transmitted to the assembled delegates. "Breaking their alliance should have made them weaker." Trade Minister Yoon-Soo Park of the Neutral Commerce Guild, monitoring the tactical reports from her space station, felt ice in her veins as she understood what was really happening. "You didn't break their alliance," she whispered to the empty briefing room. "You just made them each other's executioners." The most terrifying aspect wasn't the military casualties. Both human and Zephyrian forces had been surprisingly merciful toward non-combatants. The horror lay in the coordinated precision of 2 species conducting separate wars with identical goals, moving like the 2 hands of a clock toward the same inevitable moment. And that moment was rapidly approaching the Krell homeworld. Reports from the front lines painted a picture that defied military understanding. Human fleets would arrive at a system and methodically dismantle its defenses with overwhelming firepower. Hours later, Zephyrian bioships would appear and finish off any survivors with adaptive weapons that evolved to counter each defensive measure. Neither force communicated with the other, yet they moved with perfect timing. "It's like they can read each other's minds," reported one surviving Krell officer who had witnessed both attacks. "The humans clear the way, and the Zephyrians follow, up as if they planned it together. But our intelligence confirms they haven't spoken to each other in months." Admiral Kyung-ho, retreating with the remnants of his once mighty fleet toward the Krell homeworld, finally understood the magnitude of his mistake. He had assumed that breaking the sacred bond would create 2 weakened enemies. Instead, he had forged 2 separate apocalypses that somehow still moved as one. His final transmission to the Krell homeworld was simple. "Prepare for siege. Both species are coming. May the depths have mercy on us all, because they will not." The greatest military force in Krell history was being systematically destroyed by enemies who no longer trusted each other, but still shared the same terrible purpose. The Krell homeworld of Amphibios hung in space like a blue-green jewel, its vast oceans reflecting the light of two approaching fleets. Admiral Haiwan Song's human armada approached from the north, while warsinger Taiman's Zephyrian biofleet came from the south. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the final battle might be fought between former allies rather than their common enemy. Unknown Zephyrian vessels, Admiral Haiwan transmitted, her voice carrying months of buried pain. You are approaching the primary target. What are your intentions? Warsinger Taimin's response rippled across space in harmonics that the human translation system struggled to render. Nest friend who was, Haiwan who remembers. We sing the same ending song. On her flagship's bridge, Admiral Haiwan felt something crack inside her chest, a wall she had built around her heart to contain the grief. Through the view screen, she could see the Zephyrian bioships, their living, hulls pulsing with patterns she remembered from happier days on New Harmony. Warsinger Taimin, she said, her voice breaking slightly on the familiar name. You still remember the old ways of speaking. All songs remember, friend Haiwan. Even songs of war carry melodies of what was. Below them, Amphibious powered up its final defenses in desperation. Admiral Kyung-ho's last fleet, barely 50 vessels salvaged from the wreckage of his empire, took position around their dying world. This ends today, Admiral Kyung-ho broadcast, on all frequencies, his throat sac pulsing with defiance even in defeat. But destroying us has cost you everything you claim to protect. Your alliance is broken. Your unity is shattered. We achieved our goal even in failure. For a long moment, silence filled the space between the three fleets. Then Admiral Haiwan spoke, her words carried by both human quantum transmitters and Zephyrian bioacoustic channels. Warsinger Taimin, shall we show them what a broken bond truly looks like? With harmony that ends all, friend Haiwan. The final assault was a symphony of destruction that neither species could have achieved alone. Human kinetic weapons carved precise channels through the Krell defense grid, while Zephyrian biotorpedoes followed those paths like living things, adapting to each defensive countermeasure in real time. Human electronic warfare systems jammed enemy communications at the exact moments when Zephyrian sonic weapons would be most effective. It wasn't coordination, it was something deeper. Two species moving as one organism, each anticipating this other's needs without any communication at all. Admiral Kyung-ho's flagship died caught between precise human gunnery and a Zephyrian grief singer whose final song shattered the vessel's hull like fragile glass. His last transmission was a single word: impossible. The battle lasted only minutes. When it ended, the orbital space around Amphibios was filled with the drifting debris of the Krell's final fleet. The planet below transmitted its unconditional surrender on all frequencies. In the aftermath, Admiral Haiwan and Warsinger Taimin found themselves face-to-face via hologram for the first time since the breaking 6 months ago. Friend Taimin, Admiral Haiwan said, tears streaming down her face as she looked at her counterpart's familiar scale patterns. I thought, when they destroyed the chambers, I thought we had lost everything. The Zephyrian leader's scales shifted through colors that meant joy touched by sorrow, relief born of pain. Sacred bond cannot break, friend Haiwan. Sacred bond can only change shape. The swimmers in metal taught us this truth that burns. Around them, the galaxy was already changing. The Galactic Council was drafting emergency treaties to ensure such an attack could never happen again. The species who had supported the Krell's assault were sending desperate diplomatic messages, begging forgiveness from the two powers who had just demonstrated what broken alliance actually meant. Other civilizations that had watched the war were reassessing their own relationships, wondering if cooperation might be safer than competition after all. The children on New Harmony, Admiral Haiwan asked softly, the ones who survived the attack, they have been asking about you. Warsinger Taimin's harmonics carried warmth for the first time in months, and the Nest songs remember friend Haiwan's laugh that brightens dark places. When do we return? To the peaceful place? Together, Admiral Haiwan said, finally understanding what they had really lost and found. We go home together. The message they sent to the galaxy was simple, but carried the weight of two species who had learned to wage war as efficiently as they had once made peace. Unity is not weakness to be exploited. It is strength to be feared. We will ensure that no one forgets this lesson. Within days, applications for cooperative research projects flooded both human and Zephyrian governments. Species that had never considered working together suddenly saw the advantages of alliance. The age of casual aggression against peaceful cooperation was ending. Back on New Harmony, the reconstruction began with both species working side by side, once again. The neural link chambers were rebuilt stronger than before. Children who had hidden in shelters during the attack now played together in gardens that bloomed with hybrid flowers, living symbols of what could be achieved when different kinds of life chose to dream the same dreams. The Krell had succeeded in breaking the old bond between humans and Zephyrians. But in doing so, they had forged something far more powerful, a connection tested by fire, strengthened by shared loss, and proven unbreakable by the very forces that had tried to destroy it. The galaxy now knew that some bonds, when broken, don't disappear. They transform into something stronger, more beautiful, and infinitely more dangerous to those who would threaten them.